What's going on, guys? Wait on Waykup back, and after a long hiatus, I'm back with a review, and today we're going to be talking about the Kaloud Lotus L+. For those of you who aren't aware, the Lotus is something revolutionary in hookah. It was something that came out in 2013, and it was the first heat management device. It made it so you didn't have to use foil, and it provided a cleaner and more efficient smoke. It made your coals last longer, and it provided no direct contact with the coals and the tobacco. That was 2013, and last year, at the end of the year, we finally saw the much anticipated version of the Lotus, the L+. Now, heat management devices have seen a lot of change since the initial Lotus came out in 2013. We saw the Shisha Buck Stratus come out, the MIG Razor come out in Germany. We saw the Ottoman Ignis come out, which is no longer available in the US. It never really was. And you may be finding yourself asking, but why? And that's a pretty simple question, actually. So, Kaloud actually patented the HMD design of the Lotus. And because the Ignis fell too close to that, Kaloud was sending cease and desist orders to anyone selling it in the US. Hence why it's no longer available readily from any of your favorite vendors like Hookah Shisha, Hookah Heroes, 5-Star, Hookah John, or anything like that, because they're not allowed to sell it. Now, I have mixed feelings about this, but we'll save that for later. The important thing to remember is that Kaloud invented the heat management device. And while yes, that's an amazing thing, and it's something that you should absolutely give Kaloud the props for, and I do, I give them full credit for creating the HMD. They didn't patent the improvement of the design, and it falls under patent law whether it's kind of more or less up to Kaloud to determine what that's like. So I actually did an interview with Reza, the owner of Kaloud and the creator of the Lotus, back in December before the Lotus came out. So as thank you, he actually sent me this Lotus L+, and I decided it was a good time to give you guys a review on it. I've done a lot of testing, and it's finally time to give you my thoughts. So, the L+. So it's vastly just an improvement on the old Lotus. It's not a complete redesign or anything like that. If you look at it physically, they're not that much different on the outside. The Lotus L+ is a little bit taller, but not by much, and a little bit wider. Again, not by much. On the inside is where you're going to see the big differences. Like I said, it's a little bit wider, and so this is meant to allow for 3 cubes to be used in it instead of just 3 flats like you saw in the Lotus, the original Lotus anyway. So, on top of that, in the inside you'll see 3 notches, and that's where your coals are meant to go. This is meant to help prevent coals from blacking out on the bottom like they would in the Lotus. Allows airflow to get through to them, and keeps them lit and ready to go. That's about it. Those are the only real improvements to the device. Yep. So in terms of functionality, how does this work? So, do 3 cubes fit? Well, yes, more or less. The problem is it's not a very forgiving fit. They fit, but you're kind of more or less trying to trick them in there. If you see it, it's a struggle for me to get them in there. Sometimes if you cook coals down enough, they'll go in right away on the first try. But if you're like me and you want the most out of your coals, you'll let them cook until they're done, and then you'll try to put them in your Lotus. And it works, but like I said, it's a very snug fit. As you can see, the coals are really close together. And this causes a problem because with the coals touching, they actually black out if they're touching for long enough. So with the coals touching where they're at in the middle, the 3 corners where they're touching will black out. Granted, in the middle of the session you can take your coals out and move them around once they've dwindled a little bit, but do you want to do that with a Lotus? I mean, that's not why I use an HMD. I use an HMD because I want to have a hassle-free smoke. It makes smoking a lot easier because you don't have to mess with your coals. So, doing this, it kind of defeats the purpose to a certain extent without entirely doing so. So yeah, they fit. If you've got normal size cubes like Cocoa Earth, I'm using Golden Desert today, Charcoal Flare, any normal size cube will work. But if you get into something like Superior Cocos, which are a little bit bigger of a coal, or something like the Cocoa Earth Big Cubes, it does not fit. Doesn't fit at all. So the raised bumps on the bottom do actually help to prevent the coals from blacking out. They do help to provide airflow, and that's probably the biggest actual improvement that works as it should. So yes, your coals won't black out with that, and that's a good thing, and I'm happy that that works. So in comparison to the old Lotus, it's not a ton better. This is something that if you don't have a Lotus and you're looking to get one, this would be the Lotus to get for sure, because it is better. But if you already have a Lotus, then it's not going to be a ton better, unless you really want to use 3 cubes. So we talked about the Lotus L Plus in comparison to the old Lotus, and yeah, it's an improvement. But when you're thinking about things like HMDs, you have to contextualize them. In context, this is a good HMD because it's better than the original Lotus, and it works. But if you contextualize it in the scheme of all HMDs, it's the least functional of some of the HMDs that we've seen. If you look at things like the MIG Razor, the Shisha Stratus, or the Ottoman Ignis, all 3 of those allowed plenty of room for 3 cubes, and plenty of room for them not to touch and black out. So, it's kind of less functional than those in that regard. Granted, yeah, it still works, but you gotta think about it, like I said, in context. In context to the Lotus, absolutely an improvement. In context to everything, it's kind of like half a step. It doesn't really have the improvements that something like the Stratus has, and it's got basically the same stuff as the Razor and the Ignis, but it doesn't fit 3 cubes as well. And because it doesn't fit 3 cubes as well, it's gonna snuff out a little bit of your coal. So when you're thinking about buying one, why would you buy one that's not as good as the others? That's just something to think about. It's all up to you really what you want to do when you buy it. So to close this off, let's just cover what we've talked about. It's an improvement on the old Lotus. It's not as good as some of the other Lotuses. So something I want you to think about is look at the Ignis. On the Ignis, from the original Lotus, we saw the improvements of a wider design, bumps on the bottom. That made it so the coals didn't black out and you could fit 3 cubes. Aren't those the same improvements that we're seeing on the L Plus? And isn't Kaloud the company that ordered cease and desist orders to Ottoman for selling this, or to vendors for selling the Ignis essentially? So it's interesting to me to see the same improvements, just not done quite as well on the L Plus. I think in context, the Ignis is still the superior device. No matter how you look at it, it's cheaper and it works a little bit better. Granted, maybe not by a ton better, but better is better. So why would you spend more to get something that works less? And I've heard the argument that yes, you're supporting the legal version technically, the version that is the original and the version that's supporting Kaloud, the innovators of the HMD. And while yeah, that's true, I think it's important to realize that sure, they invented it, but just because they invented it doesn't mean you have to support them anymore. You could support them by buying the original Lotus or buying this, and that's great. You're supporting the company that started HMDs. But wouldn't you rather support a company that's pushing HMDs further, like Shisha Bucks? Or wouldn't you rather support a slightly superior device with the Ignis? MIG Razor is kind of a different story, but you get my point. The Lotus L Plus is a good device, but it's not the be-all end-all upgrade that we wanted from the Lotus. And I don't know. I'm left feeling conflicted with it, and it's not something I can recommend to you if you already have something like an Ignis or a Stratus or even a Razor. If you only have the original Lotus and you want to upgrade, sure, you can go for this, but at that point I'd almost just recommend you get an Ignis for cheaper. That said, that's just my opinion. You can take it for what it's worth, since I haven't said that in a few months. But at the end of the day, it's up to you guys. If you want to support originality, Lotus L Plus is a good device. It does function well. You just need to think about it in context to other HMDs on the market. And keep in mind, the Shisha Stratus is also not technically illegal, I don't think. There's no cease and desist orders against it anyway. That said, that's just my opinion. You guys can take it for what it is. I'm left feeling conflicted with advice. If you want to pick it up, you can find it at Hookah Heroes, you can find it at Hookah Shisha, you can find it basically everywhere the HMDs are sold. But that's about it for me today, guys. I'm left feeling conflicted with this. It's such a device. It's like a coal that it was really well lit, but then it just kind of fell into the ashes. But from the ashes, we see something like a phoenix arise. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, a like or subscribe would be super appreciated. You don't have to if you don't want to, but that's all. You can follow me on Instagram at WaitOnAHookah. I post pictures there sometimes. Find me on Reddit doing picture reviews more frequently. You can find my blog posts pretty much weekly on either b2hookah.com or hookahheroes.com. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, and I will see you guys on the next video. Bye.